All right, so the rosters have been mostly figured out for next year. We pretty much know what we're working with, and boy, has there been some turnover, not just in this year, but especially if you look at the past 18 months. And while I know a lot of people are saying that's good, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with them, I think there's a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. All right, so first off, I'm doing a standing interview because sitting in my chair at this desk for the entire pandemic is starting to give me back pain. I guess that's what happens when you hit your 30s. So please subscribe because I'm literally breaking my back for you. Let's see how this works. Anyway, actually earlier today, I was looking on Twitter and Blue Jay, frequent Hotline League caller, those that watch will know who he is, tweeted out something interesting. If you look at Summer Split 2019 and basically what the rosters looked like going into that, which again was only about 18 months ago, you see a wildly different list of names and different teams. In fact, only Jensen, CoreJJ, and Someday are unchanged out of the 50 players and 10 coaches. Even when you count coaches, it's part of that. So not only did I take a look at that, but I also looked at the fact that about only 19 of the 50 players that were playing at the start of Summer Split last year are going to be starting in the LCS this coming year. Now I know, the YouTube comments and the Reddit comments will just be like, good. But I think that's such an oversimplified reaction. Like, I get that a lot of people are excited about this. In my last video that I did talking about the players that weren't going to be making into the LCS this year, a lot of the big names, people thought I was defending these veterans or these washed pros or whatever. That is not what I'm doing. I am trying to start a conversation and have a conversation about how crazy it is that we have changed the majority of our LCS pros out over the span of a year and a half. That is pretty much unprecedented to my knowledge in any kind of traditional sports world. I get we're not traditional sports, right? But even if you look at the other leagues, it's just wild. And so this is definitely a transition time for the LCS, and it kind of has been for a while, especially if you look at even the names on that list that we're not playing in this year. I think there's a good chance that hopefully the talent that we've had that was not putting out a good performance ends up getting replaced by somebody who could be more competitive. A lot of these folks are not going to be competitive out the gate. And so I do think it's important that while I'm excited to see what TLC9 and even TSM, though their roster is perhaps a little wonky looking, do in the coming year, we need to understand that there's just probably going to be a lot of really weird stuff happening in the LCS next year when you look at some of the rosters that are filled with players that just have never competed in the LCS before. Not only does it take a long time for synergy to be built up by players over these different years working with each other and coaches coming in to actually coach these specific players in these teams, because remember, we've had a ton of movement on the coaching front as well. But it also just takes time for people to get stage experience and to feel comfortable competing against some of the big names that are left in the LCS, as few as there are. So out the gate, I expect a lot of craziness. I also think, folks were critical of teams for just moving players around. And I think that is fair. So it's a bad idea for us to keep grabbing players and just playing musical chairs with the same group of people. However, I do think it's really important that we realize that this also cannot be something that we do every single year. So fans need to be patient as we have these new folks come in. Because yes, guess what? The player who just got out of high school or skipped academy to make it straight into the LCS is not going to look as good as that veteran that you really enjoyed for a long time out the gate. It's going to take a while for these faces to rise up to the skill level and hopefully surpass the players that we had previously. So I think it's important for us to have patience whenever it comes to their skill level. But it's not just that as well. It's bad for us to keep doing this long term from a brand perspective. I mean, again, if you were rooting for a player in summer of last year, you probably can no longer root for that player anymore. And fandom and brand is built on years and years of seeing different players and different names that compete. I'm actually kind of curious of you guys, and I'd love to see in the comments how many of you are considering not watching LCS next year. I'm not advocating that by any means, by the way. I hope people tune in to sort of see what these new rosters and teams can do, and what some of the continuing narratives, like what we have with 100 Thieves, where they were at Golden Guardians, now all these players are going to be there with Someday. I hope folks continue to cheer for them. But I think, since I did that last video about players that are big names that might not be competing anymore, we have now confirmation that Doublelift has retired and will not be competing. And between him and Bjergsen, those are undoubtedly the two most popular players in the LCS. In fact, I would ask you guys, as I bump my microphone, I would ask you guys, who is the most popular player in the LCS? Who is the poster child of the LCS now? That's what's crazy to me. Is it Perkz? Because he just showed up. He hasn't played a single game yet, and perhaps he is now the most popular player in the LCS. Is it CoreJJ? I mean, I love Core. He's been doing these in-houses, but he's also kind of a quiet guy. And I think, until maybe very recently, did not have a ton of fans in the LCS. So I just think it's really interesting to think about this stuff and what it will mean, and why it's important that we dedicate ourselves in the LCS as fans, as content creators, as everyone, to really commit to at least some of the players that we're seeing in the LCS next year, because it's time for us to not only hope and root for these players and hope that they can get good, because a lot of them won't be out the gate, but also hope that they can build brands and have legacies and have their own stories, because the folks that had all those stories and brands and legacies are no longer going to be really competing in the LCS for the most part going forward. So again, it's just wild to me. I hope viewership doesn't drop. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a dip for a while. It is 100% going to be a transition year for the LCS, and kind of, I think, already has been. We just haven't really noticed. And I'm kind of curious what you guys all think about this. So leave some comments about it. Please subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video as well. Thanks so much for watching that video. Hope you really enjoyed it. Black Friday deals are happening at Alienware.com/Travis. Go over to the Alienware page. You'll land on my page, but then click through to the Black Friday stuff. You'll find some great deals. And man, have they got some fantastic markdowns for this week or so. So be sure to check it out if you're in the market. Maybe you want to get one of those new 3000 series computers. Maybe you want to get like a great laptop or something for work. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring this video, and please do me a favor and click the link in the description to check out their Black Friday stuff happening this week.